So I have the Pixel Fold and the Z Fold. Let's check them out and see how they compare. So first, let's cover the usability of the outside screen, and the first thing I want to mention here is the aspect ratio. So the Z Fold series has this tall and narrow aspect ratio, which can be a little bit awkward to use at times. One of the main things that you're going to come across with this aspect ratio is typing on it is going to be a little bit cramped because of the narrow form factor. The keyboard squeezes in all the letters in there, and so your overall area to type each key is a lot smaller, and I constantly select the wrong letter when I'm typing, definitely more often than on the normal phones or even the Pixel Fold here, which has the shorter and wider aspect ratio. So with this aspect ratio, you can see how the keyboard is much more comfortable to use, more spread out to use on the Pixel Fold rather than the Z Fold. It will encroach a little bit further up onto the app because of the shorter aspect ratio, so that is one of the negatives. You get less of the app visible while you're typing. Another great benefit of the shorter and wider aspect ratio is that it's very close to how videos are recorded. Even though the Pixel Fold is a shorter, technically smaller screen in terms of measurement, the videos are actually much larger in the Pixel Fold than the Z Fold. The final thing that comes to mind when it comes to the front screen is just the apps in general are gonna fit better on the Pixel Fold. I've come across a lot of times in the Z Fold where even just reading articles, which is an HTML website, doesn't quite fit completely on the front screen. So that will cause me to have to kind of scroll left and right a little bit just to finish the line. For the Pixel Fold, mainly everything fits properly. Even taking a picture with the main smaller screen, it's a better experience with the Pixel Fold just because it's a much larger viewfinder basically, and it helps take photos better. So now let's open the phones and let's take a look at the inside screens. The first thing I want to talk about is the software optimization. So Samsung has a lot of features that are very useful for the Fold series in particular. So right here I have YouTube on the right on both phones and Chrome on the left. So with Samsung you have the ability to save your split screen views, and this lets you have them already set up. So when you want to use the common ones, like let's say YouTube and Chrome, you can just click on that on the preset and it'll pop them both up how you saved it. Pixel Fold does not have that feature, and really the only feature that the Pixel Fold has is that you could double tap to switch it. But then this is Samsung, you could also switch it to top and bottom split screen, and you could also click the star to save it as a preset. Now with that you can save it either in the taskbar, or with Samsung you also have the option to save it on your edge panel. On top of that, you can also select another app and either split one of those one of the sides into half, make it 2 apps on one side and one on the left, or you could place it in the middle and have it as a pop-up. Now this is especially useful when I already have my phone in split screen mode and I just want to respond to a message that came in. Giving me the option to place the app that the message came in through as a pop-up window lets me see the app completely while in this view, and also lets me respond to the message right there. But with Pixel Fold you're kind of limited to finding the notification and replying on the notification. So going on to the next point on the inner screen is the landscape versus portrait debate. So with Samsung, when you open the phone, you're actually in portrait mode, and with the Pixel Fold, you're in landscape mode. So I find the Pixel Fold opening to a landscape view being the more useful of the two, as you know, most of the time when I'm opening the phone, I'm gonna want it to be in landscape view already. In terms of split screen, having it in the landscape view is also helpful because you get a wider ratio on the inner screen. So with Samsung you basically have 2 tall screens, and with the Pixel Fold you have wider screens. And I just noticed something that was very interesting. Funny enough, the Pixel Fold is a little smoother when you're scrolling on both at the same time compared to Samsung. Alright, so getting back to the landscape versus portrait orientation. When I'm reading an article, which I've done before, or if I'm typing notes on the Samsung Notes app or the Keep Notes app from Google, the letters are shrunken down pretty small and can sometimes be a little bit tough to read. Versus when doing it on the Pixel Fold, you're getting that really wide aspect ratio, and the letters are going to be larger because it has the room to fit. So that's the benefit of having the landscape view, especially for split screen. The negative being that when you bring up the keyboard in this view, I actually went ahead and shrunk the height of the keyboard to extra short on this one, and it's helped quite a bit. But even with that, you can see that here you have barely half, and here you have well over half, even with a tall keyboard. This is where the portrait mode really comes into play, where you can see more of the screen when you're typing. The keyboard is less intrusive on the portrait mode. But what I want to kind of go over was that tabletop mode or the flex mode, and why I prefer the Pixel Fold aspect ratio even more because of this. So alright, so we have the same video playing and in tabletop mode, and you can see how much larger the video is on the Pixel Fold on tabletop mode, and that's purely because of the aspect ratio. And that right there just makes tabletop mode that much more useful, and that also translates to the camera. You can see at the bottom has all of the the controls for it. They're pretty similar. I think Pixel did a better job with the bottom portion because larger buttons are always helpful. The big benefit comes with the viewfinder because the screen folds into the larger aspect ratio. The viewfinder on the Pixel Fold is much larger and useful versus the Z Fold, and that just helps get you a better photo. Another benefit with the Z Fold is that you can actually flip it to landscape orientation, and it's going to perform the exact same way as if it was in portrait orientation, but with the wider windows, which is going to make it easier to read and to navigate and everything. With Pixel Fold, it's going to stay with that divider in the same spot. It doesn't let you switch it to left and right. I think that the landscape is the better orientation anyway, but that's just something less that the Pixel Fold can do compared to Samsung. So looking at both phones, even though they had the same screen size, you can visually see that the Z Fold actually has a smaller footprint. I'm all for having the biggest screen possible on a smaller form factor. Honestly, I feel like the only thing Samsung is really missing is the aspect ratio. I think they have the phone folding in the wrong way. The other difference on the inner screen is the use of, or the lack of, a stylus for the Pixel Fold. So with the Z Fold, it's not something that I use all the time, but when I do use it, I really do appreciate having it. And having that stylus there to be able to edit photos, especially when I want to, zoom in, maybe add some writing or highlight certain areas. Having the accuracy of the S Pen is very beneficial, and that's something that the Pixel Fold is lacking pretty much completely. So the other thing I wanted to cover for the inner screen is how I've been seeing a lot about apps not filling the inside screen fully. It's unfortunate that not every app is optimized, but I just don't think that having the app look a little bit smaller is really going to ruin the experience with the phone. And really, both phones have this same problem. So looking at the speed test app, you'll see here on the Samsung side that it's filling up the screen, and then you'll see here on the Pixel Fold side that it's not filling up the screen. But it's not that Samsung has really optimized this all that much, even though Samsung does have features that let you force the app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the Z Fold into landscape orientation, and now you see that they both have space on the sides. Now Samsung does do it a little bit better, where the background of the phone is in the background here, just blurred out, while Pixel is just black. So someone had mentioned that it just feels incomplete, and I could agree with that. It does feel a little bit incomplete having just black here versus having the background blurred out. But it's just part of the having a fold. Just not every app is optimized. Now you can easily just flip it over. Now both in portrait mode, you can see that they go all the way to the edge. So it's just a matter of, you know, Samsung just happens to open in portrait mode, so most apps are gonna fill up the screen like this, and Google opens up in landscape view, so most apps are gonna have the black bars. Looking at the battery and how long it lasts, the Pixel Fold is very similar to the Z Fold in terms of how many hours it lasts and how much screen on time you really get. That comes to the Z Fold 4 having a smaller battery but a more efficient chipset, and the Pixel Fold having a larger battery and a less efficient chipset. But basically, you're gonna have the same experience with the Z Fold 4 and the Pixel Fold. Now, the Z Fold 5 is coming out in just a couple of months. At minimum, the Z Fold 5 is gonna have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy. And that chipset has shown to be a monster, both in power and in battery efficiency. So my prediction is that the Z Fold 5 is gonna come out on top by quite a large margin when compared to the Pixel Fold and the Z Fold 4. So for the time being, the battery is a wash. In a couple months, when the Z Fold 5 comes out, the Z Fold 5 is gonna outshine the Pixel Fold in most cases. Really, the Pixel Fold is the one that I prefer 99% of the time because of the form factor, the aspect ratio, and the fact that it opens into a landscape view by default. So thanks for watching. I really do appreciate you taking the time and watching the video. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please leave a like and subscribe as well. Thanks, I'll see you next time.